Progress. Hey, how are we, everyone? So good to be here. My name is Tanga, and welcome to the Soul-Led Money Mastery. Here as part of our masterclasses and the launch with sacredyou.love. It's amazing watching these. I don't know about you guys, but the wisdom that's been shared as part of these series is really powerful, and I've learned so much as well. So as you're dropping in, can we just quickly, whether you're dropping in online or whether you're joining here in Zoom, pop in the chat, whereabouts are you? Where are you checking in from? And what's the weather like for you today? And while you're doing that, I'll just let you know, oh, great. So we've got Victoria, Canada. Yay. I'm actually on holiday. I'm normally from the Gold Coast in Australia, but we've come up to the Sunshine Coast, which is another piece of Queensland in Australia as well. Interesting, when we first came here, we didn't realise that the two were different, and one's on the north side and one's right down on the south side. So we're just trucking along. Oh yeah, there's some sort of coast. We'll go that way. It was the opposite side anyway. So 2 hours later, we realised we're in the wrong end. It's all good. Okay, so what we're here to, there's a Sunshine Coast there in Canada. Yay, that's amazing. All right, so what we're going to do is spend some time together, and I honour that you've taken some time out to be with us today, and also on the replay. So we've got the lovely Sophia who's going to be, hi Jen, we've got people popping in as we're talking. Sophia's going to also check, because I'll be so into this presentation as I get a little bit carried away. We're just going to monitor any of the comments that come through. So before we get started, let me share the screen. So I am going to do a little bit of a presentation, and the reason for that is more to keep me on track, because I tend to go off on tangents, and I think both Jen and Jennifer know that. They've spoken to me before. So I'm going to share the screen with you all now, and I'll still be poking around here as well. How's that? Can we see the big screen come up? Great, we're live. Yay. All right, so what we're going to do firstly is, as part of the traditions of Australia and many communities as well, as we acknowledge the country, acknowledge the traditional custodians and the First Nations people of the country in which we're coming from. So I mentioned before that we're on holiday at the moment, so I did a little bit of research. And this area, traditional custodians or First Nations people, are the Kabi Kabi and the Jinibara peoples. So we acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and their elders past, present and emerging. And we pay our respects to all peoples who will be joining us from First Nations across the globe. And we recognise that their histories and their stories of the land and their wisdoms of the land are, you know, forever there for us, and the wisdom for us to tap into. So what we're going to do too is, I'd love for you to drop into the chat, or even into if you're in social media, drop into there. What comes up for you when you hear the word money? So can you see that when we think about money, sometimes it's a good idea to drop into your body. So let's have a think about what's coming up. And what we're doing here is we're honouring the wisdom of what's really coming up. So yes, tightness and constriction. Absolutely. Tightness and panic. Yeah. You know, that makes so much sense. When we think about some of the things that have been going on for us, what we're going to do is just tap into what those feelings are and build that muscle to notice, because we're all in such automatic system. We're automatically going and doing things that sometimes just stepping back and giving ourselves space to notice what's going on allows us to tap into the wisdom of our bodies. So we're going to do a very quick practice, and I'm going to speak into this a little bit later. But let's do what we call just a grounding. So 3 deep breaths in, and you're welcome to pop your feet if it's available to you, flat on the ground. And I invite you to close your eyes as well if that is available to you. And breathe in for 3. Hold it at the top for 3. And then let it out slowly for 3, 2, 1. Holding it out for 3. Of course, you wouldn't be doing this if you're driving. And then back in for 3. Just breathe into that tightness that you might be feeling. Hold it down and out again. Hold it out for 3. And then back in. And I don't know about you, but my shoulders are relaxing. My chest is expanding. And, you know, this happens not just even with the word money, but for me, it was around preparing for any class. I always notice this tightness. And now I invite you, if you're not driving and if you're in a safe zone, is just do a quick look over your right shoulder and see that in this environment, you're safe. And we're going to turn around again and look over our left shoulder. And just being sure that there's no saber-toothed tiger about to pounce on us. And then as we look forward, let's notice 3 things in our surrounds. Looking around and reminding our body that we are safe and everything is well. Excellent. All right, so what I wanted to do was, can you see the slide about the 3D and the 5D consciousness? Has that come through? Can I see a thumbs up? Excellent. And what I want to remind us is, as we are shifting in what we know has been the old ways of looking at money and money understanding. I just found this on a quick search yesterday, and I thought this is a perfect way to really understand what the shift is that is happening, that we're all noticing. So many people have said to me, oh, you know, like I'm starting to question the things around money, and I just don't know what's happening. And so when we think about where we've been to, or we currently might still be in, and we're just, you know, transitioning, the 3D consciousness is very ego-based, right? It's very separational. And if we think about wealth, it's about, it's a separation. It's some people do better than others. And we see this around us. Love is conditional. It's conditional on you being the same as me, and that we're all in this space. That separation is, I look the same as you, and this love could be conditional on many different things. So we're going to be exploring some of these things that start to happen. Man believes that he's victim, and seeing is believing, like, give me the proof. Give me the proof. So there's a lot of logical thinking, and there's a lot of patriarchal. And I'll start to speak into this a little bit more around how it impacts the way that we've been taught about money. And, you know, when we look at that list in the 3D consciousness, we notice, this is making sense. And there's this really big thing around scarcity mindset as well. And as we start to really elevate towards 5D consciousness, and many of us are like transitioning, and we're like, oh, what's this all about? It's very soul-based, where we're starting to trust the inner signals that are coming through for us. And the interesting thing that I found, and I do still struggle with it, I really have to lean into this more, is the unity consciousness. Because we're so used to, I've got to do this, I've got to fix this. You know, if you're moving into business, how many of us are starting to realize, I can't do this on my own? I can't elevate without the help of others. And communities like Sacred You is perfect because many of us are coming together and sharing our wisdom and realizing, wow, we can't do this on our own. We nourish each other. Our love is unconditional. It doesn't matter who is in front of me, what is in front of me, we love. And sacredyou.love is perfect for that. So when we understand that we are co-creating our reality, we believe in this higher consciousness, that there is more available to us. And we'll talk about this around resourcefulness as well. And the difference is believing first. When we believe first, we begin to see. And this is so rich in terms of wealth. And when we start to step into this, it's powerful, and we trust this intuition. We start to really see that how we elevate into the 5D consciousness, we're starting to feel like, oh, I say it all the time, oh my God, I feel like I'm at home again. I feel like I'm coming home, right? Absolutely. I'm really loving what's coming up in the chat there, the heart rules, and that is okay. Like, how many of us have seen that, you know, you've got to think your way through it. And yes, there is actually a time and a space for our mind to click in. So we're going to talk about that as well. So I really thought this is a really good way to understand how that works in with wealth and money. So as we're talking about that, I just wanted to quickly talk a little bit about myself, and I'll move that to the other side. Let's just change that little screen. Hope you can all see that now. So I'm a certified money, business and life coach. I'm also a trauma of money. So much of the teaching that I'm bringing here has come from my learnings as a trauma of money certified practitioner. And I'll explain why it's so relevant in the space that we're in. So my background has always been in the financial space, initially as a bank in the banking industry. But my biggest learning was through my lived experience when I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I was 39. That was 18 years ago. And we weren't set up financially to do this. I just moved into mortgage brokering. I thought that, okay, once I hit the money, we'll be able to, you know, cover all our insurances again. So we let go of the insurances. And there was a lot of shame because that's when the breast cancer hit. And if anyone knows how insurance works, that's what they would define as a pre-existing illness. And so there was no cover. I'd already let go of the ones that we had before. And so eventually we lost everything, financially bankrupt and emotionally bankrupt. There was a lot of shame in that. And so when we went through the treatment, I say we because it affected myself and my family. You know, we went through the financial hardship. I began to ask myself, why is it that I wasn't prepared? Why is it that I felt that I could let go of all these things? And yet on the other side of it, I'd had all of this experience in the finance industry. I was selling insurances. I was selling this belief around money. So this is where my journey has led me to where we are today, is bringing together what we call the evidence-based practices with the money literacy side. So I'm going to speak a little bit into how it's so important for us to bring in the evidence-based mindset practices that shore up the money literacy side of things as well. How's this landing for everyone? Is this making sense so far and not? I tend to get off because I've been in the space for so long. I can go off on little tangents. So let's talk about, we're going to talk about the 6 steps that we use to bring you through money education. So it's very soul-led. This is where we're transitioning into the 5D understanding of money. And so what you'll be able to see there is number one, this is our first phase. And you see lots of little wriggly lines, different colors. And this is the first part of our journey, which is what we call, excuse me, I've got the little sniffles here, is what we call our nervous system. Now, I mentioned before there've been a few classes earlier this week, and they've also spoken into this idea and the
Tonga, are you there? Okay, unfortunately, it looks like Tonga has frozen, but let's hope that she can come back. And she's still with us. Okay. Wonderful technology. We're still in Mercury retrograde, so we'll just have let's see what happens. No, I'm gone. Oh, that's not good. That's not good at all. Oh, crap. Crap. Hold on. I'll quickly have a thing. Three 104.
I think we are still streaming now, so I'm back. Thank you. All right, here we go.
Oh, I'm in a bloody waiting room.
I've got you back in there now, Sophia. Yay, welcome back, everyone. All right, so I'm going to go back to
frozen.
my screen.
Oops. We are having lots of little different things happening. I don't know. Tongue has dropped out. Tongue is back.
You.
Okay, you're back again? Okay, good.
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, good. That's fine.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Okay. Now, let me just ground myself again. So again, that's another example which things just happen. And I've noticed my shoulders just went really tight. I was like, no. And then I'm just like, okay, it's just ground into that. And this is a really good demonstration, as much as I didn't want it to be a demonstration, that these can happen. It just happens, and, you know, our system goes into this full-blown triggered response. So if it was going to happen at any time, this is probably in the number one phase, because how do we then start to soothe ourselves? So that is what we call the first phase in this trauma of money practice that we use. And we spend a fair bit of time in this. Why? Because there are various different levels of trauma that have actually been stored in our bodies. Now, many of us, if you've seen, do you see the little shapes? It's a pink background. Excellent. And this is what we understand to be lots of multiple different layers of trauma that have impacted our bodies through our lives. And so what we know, the generational trauma, is very much what we talk about all the time. So we talk about our ancestors. And when we tap into the wisdom of our ancestors and our background, I know for me, my parents migrated from the small island of Samoa to the big smoke of New Zealand, Wellington. And so their beliefs, their thoughts, their beliefs, and, all of that around my generation have contributed to my beliefs around money. That's probably the one area that many people know about. When we talk about relational trauma, and I'm going to very quickly go through these, this is the stuff that we deep dive a little bit more in the programs that we have. The relational trauma is how that relates, how our beliefs relate to someone else, some other institution, an event, something that's happened in our childhood. And some examples could be, I know for women, it's only been recent that women have been able to get mortgages, right? And so the trauma of someone going into the bank and being declined a loan, well, back then, systemically, it was really difficult to get a loan if you were on your own and you were a woman, right? So relational trauma is probably something that is much bigger and probably holds a lot more intelligence in our body that we get to tap into as well. That's where our narratives come from. Societal trauma really lends into, actually going back to the societal, around, if we think about consumerism, consumerism is a big word, but realistically and practically, it's the idea that our emotions, if you're not feeling happy and if you're not feeling motivated, it's like an emotion like, oh, here's how we feel better. And we provide a product. There's a product or a service that helps you feel better. How many of us have seen this? There's a lot of studies in psychology that marketing goes back many years, tap into our emotions. So how do we feel good? Buy something, buy a shoe, buy a pair of shoes, buy a bag, and so as we know it today, if you and I are talking about something earlier, Sophia and I were talking about screens, right? So now I bet your bottom dollar I will go into Facebook and it'll come up with all of these different offers around screens and things like that. So societal trauma also talks about colonization and the impacts of colonization as well. If we go back to the 5D world that I was referring to before, we are all needed, right? As we look at the idea that as a collective, it's not just in our local communities. We are needed for all the wisdom for humanity to move forward. So colonization has had this impact on many nations, and it doesn't matter what our backgrounds are, it's had an impact on all of us, right? So we look at that and how that then turns up in the way that we spend and hold money. Systemic trauma in the social context, again, we're going more into more systemic things, capitalism, and the whole idea that wealth comes from extracting from communities, and then this whole idea that we can oppress in ways by introducing these ideas that we've got to be able to draw from capitalism in order to move forward in our wealth. So when we move into other areas of tapping into laws of nature, this is the idea that reciprocity, we're always talking about, I've just had this light come through. Laws of nature, as I talk about laws of nature, and I'm just going to stand up and I'm going to go and close that curtain behind me, and this beautiful sunlight that I'll have to sadly close off for now will allow you to see me a lot clearer. Thank you for that. Thanks for your patience. So laws of nature really talks about the idea that reciprocity is such an important thing for us. And we're starting to really look at how we're being remunerated, right? So when we feel traumatized around our self-worth, we may be accepting lower levels of income than what we're actually worth. And many of us can relate to this, you know, especially if you're moving into business. If the value that you have had as an employee has been labeled by your industry as an amount like $35 an hour, you might see that your worth is $35 an hour. But the wisdom that you bring to the table and the transformation that you offer as a result of that wisdom actually might be worth quite a bit more than that. So the laws of nature is when we explore how we have been impacted by traumas that also then impact the way that we are remunerated. Notice that financial literacy is the last thing that we look at. Now, interesting, in this world of finance, it is often the very first place people go to if someone was to approach and say, hey, I'm really stressed about my money. They go straight to the budget. So what we do in this space is we really spend time in that number one phase, in the first phase. Now, this is the reason why. All right, can you see the flip the lid model come up? Hands up if you can see this for me. Excellent. Now, this is actually Dr. Dan Siegel's explanation, and I love it. Now, when we talk about traumas, this is effectively what happens. And if you hold your hand up like a fist here, and we think about this part, the front, when we put the fingers in figure one over our thumb, this is the part that we talk about, which is your brain. This is the piece that is our thinking brain, right? So when we want to make or access our critical thinking brain, this little thing here is engaged, right? But when we go into a trauma response, all of those little things that I pointed out before, this flips out, right? Now, this is a very quick overview. We go a little bit deeper than that. But the idea that that part of our brain flips out is what we call a survival response, right? Because our body, human body, it doesn't matter what we look like, it doesn't matter where we come from, it's designed to protect us and go into a trauma response. And of course, this goes right back, and this was also explained through other sessions that we've had earlier, other masterclasses that we've had earlier. Now, the interesting thing is when our brain flips out, it's saying, hey, we're in a trauma response now. We have to survive. We're going into a survival mode. And so this is where we are going into the fight, flight, or freeze state. So our brain is like, no time to think. We just got to either run, or we're going to stand here and freeze and pretend that no one can see us. There's fawning as well. Fawning is the people-pleasing, pleasure, trying to please people. That's a survival state, right? So that part of our brain is, remember, is out of action. It's out of action. Don't even talk to me about my budget because I don't have access to my brain right now. I'm in survival mode. What happened when I dropped out? I was in survival mode. My thinking brain, I had to really breathe. Now, when we first came into this, we did a little bit of an exercise, and that is as easy as it is to bring this part of our brain back into action, right? That's how easy it is to get back into a state where our brains come back into action. And the ways that you can ask yourself, if you're out there in the middle of, oh, I'm feeling really, or I'm celebrating, I'm going to go out and buy some chocolate, right? You could actually, your brain could be flipped out of the way at the moment, because, that can also be a stress response. It's like you've connected the celebration of food with a stress response. And so that part of your brain is disconnected. And so just taking a moment to settle into that brings this part of your brain back into it. And I'll explain shortly why that's really important. And this is why actually in the beginning, we spend a lot of time in the first phase, because the things that you begin to learn, the skills that you learn and how you resource yourself is because of this piece here. And you'll notice it actually is foundational. This is right across, and you'll see how this all works shortly as well. I'm going to quickly also talk about Sacred You. Now, when I am talking about a trauma-informed practice when it comes to money, I'm also still learning how to resource myself. And this is where this type of community assists, because I get to learn different modalities that are not my zone of genius, but I get to take from the wisdom from all of the different modalities available to us in an environment like this, so that I can learn how to resource myself when I know that I'm beginning to flip my lid, right? And when you think about little 2-year-olds having tantrums, they've flipped it. That's where it comes from. Powerful stuff. How's this landing for you? Is this making sense? Excellent. All right. So from there, once we go into our grounding phase, we are able to now, with our frontal cortex re-engaged, we're able to go into a visioning stage, right? We probably, up until this state, and up until the point in time, we've denied ourselves the ability to vision, to think about what is it that I really truly want? What would life look like if I was truly coming from my inner values? I call it the North Star, right? Stephen Covey talked about it as well, is starting with the end in mind. What is it that is important to you, that makes you feel so inspired, right? And when we've started to understand through the work that we've done in the first phase that, oh, actually, that was my mum's need. She wanted me to be in this profession, right? You start to understand, right, okay, so the layers of where I am now today have actually come from other people's ideas, other people's shame, and the judgment that we have on ourselves is someone else's that we've adopted. So in this visioning phase, we get to now explore what it is that is truly our soul-led journey. What does that look like? All right, taking stock. Now, here is where the wisdom of what we've learned in the first phase, and you can see now that as we're moving through these different phases, we are constantly going back to this, okay, what's coming up for us? And the interesting thing is, I would say to clients before I came into the trauma of money, I would say to them, go out and do a spending diary for me. Just for 2 weeks, go out and write down all the things that you're spending money on. The number of times that people would either avoid me afterwards or, and I learnt from one of my participants, she came back and she said, Tanga, I'm really sorry. I just couldn't do it, because every time I went to write down what I was spending on, I started to judge myself, and I would think, oh, what's Tanga going to think of me? You know, we're doing this work and I'm spending money all over the place. And so this is where we invite ourselves to understand where that's coming from and to re-ground ourselves. So taking stock phase can bring re-trigger, right? It will re-trigger our systems. But because we acknowledge, oh, okay, my body's meant to be doing this, we're not so judgmental anymore about, the tension that comes up. We can lean into that and go, oh, that's interesting. My body's getting tight. All right, let's just breathe through it, and tap into the resources that we've started to develop. All right, and so the harmonizing phase is when we have started to vision ourselves, we've got a clear picture of where we want to be, we've taken stock of where we are, we've taken stock of where, and we can see, all right, there's a gap. Right? We can be kind to ourselves and start to harmonize and really sit with, where is that coming from, right? And this is a powerful phase to go through, because now we start allowing ourselves to move towards and take action towards what it is that we really have defined as our vision, right? So this is not a process that is step by step. We're going to constantly come into this wave of reaction, but we've developed the skill on how to move through that. So harmonizing also could be the idea that, oh, I want to buy a house, but everything about my body is going, oh, no, you don't. You're not worth it. You're not worthy of owning a house. And so this sabotage starts to happen that keeps you safe in the known, which is maybe renting or staying with other people, right? So the harmonizing phase is where we get to really notice what's happening there and start to really work out, what do we need to do when it comes through? Because I don't really believe that you can actually heal yourself from a lot of things, because our body has done such a good job at storing that. You'll always notice things coming up. What we do get to do, though, is we learn how to ground ourselves through that. We learn that the belief that we've attached to an event is now no longer ruling our decisions. Two more phases, activation phase, and this is where we go through the budget. And here's the interesting thing. This is where most banks and financial literacy courses will come into first. They'll go, all right, let's go do a budget, right? Let's set up your budget, stick to your budget, right? Stick to your budget. This is where the very strong masculine financial literacy programs are, is if you set up your budget and you stick to it, you can become wealthy, right? And this was me. This was the judgment that I had. How come I knew this stuff and I couldn't stick to it? Right. Then you go through the whole idea that you're not good enough, that, how is it that I don't get this stuff and everyone else gets it? How is it that all these people that worked in the banking industry are so wealthy now, right? Let me tell you, we are all humans and not everyone is successful in certain industries. It's the highlight reel that we see. But what I will tell you now is, even in the activation, even though we've done a lot of this work in the 2, 3, and 4, the activation phase will still trigger things. Right, because you've now ascended, and we know that as you go to different levels, our system is designed to keep us safe. So we're going to notice maybe a little bit quicker, maybe before, like now I'll find myself on my phone, almost going into a cart, almost, and it's normally when I get my credit card, I'll go, ooh, what's happening here? I'll step back. Right. And so I don't judge that anymore. I realize, okay, there's still stuff that I'm, shiny object, and I still need to work with it. But the awareness and that muscle that I've built will kick in, and I know that. So the activation phase is your budgeting, is the cash flow, is going through and setting things up so that you can take the practical steps, make the practical financial decisions to achieve the vision that you've made for yourself. And then we go into the reflecting phase. And this is the piece where we learn how to reflect. We do a self-reflection. We get to go, okay, how am I doing so far? Right, I had a splurge here. All right, I went over the amount that I put aside for me. Let's just rejig things out. We are happy with ourselves that we've still made progress, because that's all we're here to do, is to make progress and make this day a better day than it was yesterday. So refining and reflecting is such an important phase, so that we do get to notice and celebrate the things that we are achieving so far. And even as we go through that, again, we are relying on the first phase skills that we have developed to go through and honor what's coming up for us. And this, my dears, is our journey to money mastery. Now, I'll add to this, when I would have money systems in place, so in the activation phase as part of the budget, one of the things that in the banking industry would have separate accounts, right? This account will be for bills, this account will be for spending, this account will be for saving. In a triggered response, and I can see what I used to do, I would walk to the ATM. I'd be like, you know what, I don't care. I just need to get this. That's okay. I'll pay it back. And I would go into my internet banking and I'll shift money out of those accounts and put them into the account so I could get that money, so I could soothe myself the way that I knew at that time. And this is where a lot of addictions come in. So I've worked with a lot of gambling clients. I've worked with a lot of addictions. I have had my own addiction. I still have addictions that I know that I soothe with, but I know how to manage that now. And so when we talk about things like an addiction where the urge is so strong, it doesn't matter what systems you've set up in place, you will sabotage those. Because until you know the underlying emotions and behaviors and where they've come from, you're not going to know what you need right then. You're not going to be able to ask yourself the questions like, oh, what's happening? What do I need right now? Could it be that all I need is some love? There's no one around to give me love, so how about I give it to myself? What are the resources that I've learned and developed? For me, it's like going out to nature. We spend a lot of time out at the ocean. You know, there's my dopamine hit. You know, let me tell you, it lasts longer when you're able to tap into that. Art. You know, so if you're tuning in here, and if you're here on the Zoom as well, drop into the chat. What is your chosen soothing mechanism that you use? Could it be meditation? Is it art? Is it dance? Is it music? Go for your life. What are the things that you tap into yourself that soothes your heart and your soul? Art, meditation, dancing, yeah. Going into the forest, absolutely. Actually, let's just talk about that too. While we're in this space, there's this thing called the trauma tunnel vision. We all know it, right? But we may not have ever really understood that this is a thing. When we go into this triggered state, our vision goes like that. And I know it too, because when I come in to do a workshop, I still get triggered and I still feel the shadow coming through, like this tunnel vision. And the best way I learned through this trauma money is just look up. Look up and look around. And so if the ocean or the forest and the universe and the sky nourishes your soul, that will lift you out straight away of this trauma response. And that part of your brain, straight away, drops straight back up. Here we go. So look and expand that vision out of the trauma tunnel. Wow. And that, my loves, is the 6-step journey to a soul-led money mastery. I'm going to stop the share now, and I'm really interested to hear what your thoughts are. What's your biggest takeaway from today? Drop it. If you're watching this from Facebook or one of our groups there, drop in and just pop a couple of things that come to mind. What's one thing that you've taken away from today's masterclass? I can't see any of the other chats or anything, so just let me know if anything comes up. Yeah, that's powerful, journaling about our moments and experiences, journaling about trauma around moments, money moments and experiences. That's really interesting because how many of us don't have a chat, and it doesn't have to be long. It's just a moment in that reflection time that you allow yourself to just think, oh, what's happening? And you're only ever going to notice that when you've let go of a lot of the noise around you, is when you disengage from the noise around you, grab a moment, whether you've got to if you don't have your journal, if you've got a smartphone like many of us do, a lot of them actually have a recording thing that you can also use, and just record your thoughts, because that's really interesting wisdom that your future you will have access to as well. Ah, yes, Jennifer, can flip your brain back on. How powerful is that? We can flip our brain back into action. Quick story too. When I used to work on a crisis line for finances, it was in Australia, and a lot of countries have this as well. And most of them all funded by government, so it's all free. And the number of times people would say to me, so if we went into a budget, many would say to me, oh my God, why can't I think of this? This is, people say I'm so dumb, and the judgment that comes through. And often I would, the response that I would give to them is, well, actually, your mind is doing exactly what it's meant to do. So you're perfectly normal. And many would say, what do you mean? And I'd say, well, you've just spent 20 minutes telling me about all of the things that have been really affecting you emotionally, the things that have happened to you in the past. Now, our brain actually, as you're talking about it, doesn't understand that was in the past. As you're talking about it, your body's getting yourself ready to go into a trauma response. And so that part of your brain is just flipped out. Right. So actually the fact that you can't think about what you spent yesterday, that's a really good indication that your body's going into a trauma response. And so let's just do a quick breathing exercise. And in that moment, I would take them through the 3 breaths in, hold, as we did at the beginning. And if you're catching this halfway through, just start from the beginning and then let it go and hold it out. And 10 times out of 10, my client would be able to go, oh, yeah, so yesterday, and rack off numbers really quickly, because that part of their brain is re-engaged. And so you're perfectly normal. If you can't think of things, generally it's an idea just to do the breathing. And that's why. Rereading sacred economics. Yeah, absolutely. Working with your nervous system. So much has everything to do with the decisions that we make about money. And it may not even be in the financial literacy space. It can be in the spending space. It can be in the hoarding space. It can be like all of those link back to our nervous system. And so Thank you, everyone, for joining us in this space. And I really do hope that my wish is, if you're watching this on the replay, that please drop in a message wherever you're watching this, because it will feed back to me. Even if I don't see it, we've got people monitoring these. We'll be able to connect. I'm going to bring in Sophia to talk about this environment, and I've mentioned it during the presentation as well. The importance of us understanding how to resource ourselves. Like, we've got amazing people here at the moment who are able to identify what it is that resources them. And most of them are because they're in this community. So we're here to work together. And Sophia, if you could jump in and just explain the specials that are on at the moment as well for the community. Thank you.
Myself, all good, all the techie stuff. Thank you. And thank you, Tanga. What an amazing, amazing masterclass. I mean, I learned so much, even if it just comes down to breathing, to reactivate or to awaken your memory. I mean, just that little bit is gold for me, because I'm always saying that my memory is full. So now it's time to wake up my memory. Love it. And all the other stuff. So thank you. And we do have a few people watching us. And so for everyone out there who's watching us, do click on the comments, say hi, let us know what your takeaway is. Would be really, really fantastic. Got to look up in this camera. Wrong camera. Now, as Tanga was mentioning, Sacred You, our sacred community, we have so many tribes that Tanga's tribe, Astoria and Money Guru, is part of, and we're really, really grateful for that. So you can come and join Tanga's tribe and all of our other tribes as well, which I'm just going to do a very quick screen share, for just $1, $1 Australian dollar. Come and try us out for 3 weeks. Then after that, it's just 15 Australian dollars a month. But do that before the 19th of May in the Northern Hemisphere, 20th of May here down under, because we are launching on the 20th of May and the price will go up. So for just that $1 for 3 weeks, you get to tune up your body, mind, and spirit. You get to experience some sounds of the soul. If you're into digital technology, come and embrace digital technology if you have any problems. You're in Oracle, the power of inquiry, becoming your own best friend, empowering you to live your best life. Break through the BS barriers. That's good. The path to self-esteem, the magical playground where you become more you. That's going on right now, one of our tribes, where they have lots of fun. The child within. There is so many tribes that you get to choose from, and you can join whichever tribes that you want to. Like I said, just $1 Australian dollar, you get to try it out for 3 weeks. Then after that, it's just 15 Australian dollars a month. And there is Tanga's tribe there, Restore Your Inner Money Guru. But if you do click on the links in the comments and join today, not only will you get access to Tanga's tribe and all the other tribes, you will also get a recording of this wonderful masterclass and our 15 other events that we've had. Tomorrow is Forgiveness is Freedom. The next day, our beautiful Jen, who's with us today, is doing Why the... well, I'm going to say Why the fuck. Except we are live on Facebook, but, Facebook might ban it. But anyway, why do we keep sabotaging ourselves? And then what the fuck is what I'm supposed to be saying is human design. So many masterclasses coming up. You will get all the recordings of all of these programs if you join us today, just for $1 Australian dollar. Click on the links below. We've had, for everyone who's watching us, our beautiful Tanga is giving away her discovery call. She's got her discovery call. The links are there. Everything else about Tanga is all there as well. Thank you, Tanga.
Thank you, everyone. Much blessings to you all. Thank you, everyone, for joining and who will join later on. I'm sending you much love, and let's just get into this 5D world of how it's meant to be.